Now I've got some more good news for you about your new hamburger joint. Did you know that your taxes will go to subsidize your competitor? Did you know that? Before you open your hamburger restaurant, keep in mind that when you pay taxes, as you surely will, that money will go to your hamburger competitor down the street. Why? Because they can. If they're a big company, they can. They can hire a lobbyist. They can send the lobbyist to Washington. They can pay the lobbyist big money. And they can say to the lobbyist, "Give us some government money." And the lobbyist goes to work. How do I know that? Because I was in the White House when they came knocking. They said, "Oh, our hamburger company needs $200 million. Really? $200 million of taxpayers' money? Are you on hard times? Well, we've got a real problem in France because we're trying to open hamburger restaurants in France, and the French say this is an American cultural invasion in France, and so the French government is subsidizing the French hamburger industry, and unless the American government subsidizes our hamburger restaurants in France, we are not on equal footing. This is not free trade, is it?" No. So we need $200 million. Okay. So I'm just letting you know, when you start your hamburger restaurant, your tax dollars will be going to finance your competitor down the street, who's the big company, who's getting that money from lobbyists that Ron Paul won't listen to. And finally, here comes the final insult. This is the final insult. When good old Ron Paul was able to get this partial, itsy-bitsy little look at the Federal Reserve and their secret meetings and their secret deals, guess what? In addition to everything else, they got several $100 million in interest-free loans. New money electronically transferred into their account. Why? To create jobs. To create $7 an hour jobs to work for that hamburger company. So there you go. That's why American young people are turning to the liberty movement. Because the American dream is in the hospital and it's on life support. And Ron Paul is awakening Americans all across this country to the reality that the system has become corrupt and the system needs a giant shock, needs a change. It doesn't need another Obama, and it doesn't need a kind of Obama. It needs a Ron Paul, something totally different to turn this thing around. Now, how am I doing? 8:01, so I got what? 9 minutes.
Take your time.
I'll just say this about foreign policy, because I got to go real fast here on foreign policy. I want to say this about the newsletters. There's a verse in the Bible that says an undeserved curse won't work. And when the newsletters first hit about Ron Paul, there was this big uproar, and then you notice they suddenly stopped. Do you know why they stopped? Because the networks were bombarded with emails from African American mothers whose sons, many of them, were in jail because of this disproportionate application of the law in the drug war that only Ron Paul stood up for. He was being accused of being a racist or something because of some newsletter that was published 20 years ago that somebody had written something that it was farcical, that he had never written and hadn't seen. And people who were accusing him were lawmakers who claimed they don't even read the bills that they pass into law. And some newsletter 20 years ago you didn't read or vet. But it stopped when the emails started coming. And we know because we got the same emails. And they were very upset because Ron Paul believes in civil liberties and he believes in fairness. And apparently there's this law, I don't understand this, somebody here tonight probably could tell you, but don't volunteer too quickly. that if you take cocaine and if you take it in a powder form, it's more expensive. If you smoke it like crack, it's less expensive. But the laws give you less of a sentence if you use it in the powdered form and a longer prison sentence if you smoke it like crack. So the law was set up to put poor people into prison and to let rich people get off. Because rich people would buy it in the powdered form. And Ron Paul, you know Ron Paul, you know what he's like. It's all Constitution, it's all civil liberties. It's not black or white, it's not anything to do with race or anything. So he went after that like a tiger. He said, this is wrong, this is unfair, this is not right, this is biased, and nobody cares about people in prison. Nobody cares. They can't vote. No politician cares. The public likes it if you're mean to people in prison. Nobody cares. But Ron Paul cares about truth, not just votes. Sometimes I wish he'd care more about votes, but he cares about truth. And he doesn't want to see somebody screwed. Anybody screwed. He'll stand up for them, even if they're in prison. Now, I didn't like this about Ron Paul. There were a lot of things about Ron Paul I thought after I joined his cause, I thought, well, he's really good about this, but we've got to change this position in a hurry. So I would write him an email and say, by the way, you're going to have to change your position on the... So, yeah, you know Ron Paul. I got nowhere, but I did change my own position. My own wife argued about that. She said, you can't be now. You're telling me you're in favor of decriminalization of drugs? And she was describing, I said, that's not what it means. That's free drugs. He's not in favor of free drugs. He's in favor of decriminalization of drugs. I said, it's just like smoking, you know? If we arrested kids on the street corner who were smoking, if we defoliated the tobacco fields of Virginia and North Carolina, if we went into the hospitals and arrested people who were dying of lung cancer and put them in prison, we'd still be smoking today. We got rid of smoking because we got rid of it in an intelligent way. And eventually, someday, we'll win the war on drugs, but only when we do it like Dr. Paul and other sensible people are saying to do it. We'll win the war on drugs, but we're not going to win it by attacking. You know, when I went in with Herbert Walker, we were going to win the war on drugs. We were going to combine his CIA experience with the military. We were going to seal the borders. We even had wars. That was what the war in Panama was all about. It was a drug war. We had Pete Teeley, who was his press secretary, take a leave of absence to write a book about a drug lord in Bahamas to take him out with intelligence information, inside information we had. We were gung-ho. If you could have won the war on drugs with money and arms and spies, we would have won it. We got nowhere. It's backwards. It's worse than it's ever been. But anyway, that's another subject. But the point is, he cared about this disproportionate number of arrests. The African American was twice as likely to be arrested as a white person for the same offense. This was offensive to him. And those emails started pouring into the networks. They stopped. They stopped. You want to know something that's interesting? Just want to say this one last thing. When there's violent crime, they ought to go to prison. But unfortunately, a lot of very violent criminals are released because the prisons are full.